first. Oh, my goodness. Like, again, I won't reiterate what I said on Thursday's show regarding, the nonsensical takes on Steph Curry early in the Olympics about how the fact that, oh, he's looking older. I don't like what I'm seeing from Steph Curry. He's not showing up the way Kevin Durant and LeBron James are, and Anthony Edwards and Anthony Davis, guys like that. I think he's starting to look old. And what did I say on the show last week and the last couple of weeks? It's not that Steph Curry's looking old or showing signs of age. You know how I know that? He's getting a shot. He's getting open looks. He's just not making them. And if there's any human being, I talked about this all last season with the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, the Chiefs have an offense problem. Well, lucky for them, they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to go on a limb and say they'll have it fixed by in the end of the season. And sure enough, they did, and they won the Super Bowl. When it comes to the shooting thing, I think it's a safe bet. When it comes to getting out of slumps, there's no human in the history of civilization that should have more faith and more trust put in one than Steph Curry. So you look at what he did the last couple of games. We could show you his numbers. Then we'll show you the Curry flurry that he put on display in the fourth quarter, particularly in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter in the gold medal game for France. We can show you what Steph Curry did when the moment counted the most. Last couple of games, he'd scored 60 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, shot 60% of the field. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Mr. Steph Curry shot 65% from three-point range. Oh, and he was just a casual plus 40 when he was on the floor for Team USA. We could talk about the fact that Steph, who had been playing pretty well, he made his shots over the course of the first 3.5 quarters. LeBron was doing his thing. Anthony Davis, who I told y'all would be the X factor, would be the guy come off the bench that I thought would make the biggest impact. He played well for Team USA. But when the moment got the brightest, and this sort of leads me into my big take on Steph Curry, kind of what I was thinking about over the weekend, thinking about this morning, this afternoon, as I was prepping for the show, is the fact that when it comes to big game performers, you cannot name 5 people in the history of the game that are better than Steph Curry. Among star players, we're not talking about your occasional role player, your Robert Ory's, your Andre Iguodala's, your Steve Kerr's that have made big shots throughout their career. We're talking superstars. If you're talking about the 5 greatest players ever in terms of clutch situations, is there anybody that I'd rather have than Steph Curry? Because once you notice when we talk about clutch, when we talk about guys stepping up, by the way, Steph Curry is the reigning clutch player of the year, just playing to my point. But this, that aside, is the fact that we have other players on your team who have hit big shots in their career. LeBron James, contrary to popular belief, is actually clutch. Kevin Durant did a lot of clutch shots in his career. Anthony Edwards, young, but he's hit some big shots. Seen a lot of Devin Booker's hit big shots in his career. If you notice in the fourth quarter, you know what they all did? When the moment got the brightest, when France was making a run and Wemby, who did his thing, Victor Wembanyama, I'm going to say it today, and I'll come back to this maybe years down the road, Wemby's going to get a gold medal. Before it's all said and done, France is going to win a gold medal in the next 3 Olympics or however much longer Wemby's going to compete in every 4 years in the Summer Olympics. They're going to get a gold medal while he's there. But while he's doing this thing and France is going on a run and all of a sudden you look up, oh, it's a 3-point game. This is starting to get a little dicey. And that's when LeBron James, that's when Steve Kerr said, you know what, Steph, you got this, buddy. Let's see what you can do. And it goes to, we'll get into the clutch factor in just a moment. But Mike Greenberg, who I have a lot of respect for, does get up in the mornings on ESPN. At times, and I love Green, I think he's one of the best in the business. At times, I feel like he can be a little too prisoner of the moment, good or bad. But he said something that, while I didn't totally agree with, I think isn't an insane statement to make. Mike Greenberg this morning said that that's the greatest shot in the history of basketball, that last 3 that Steph Curry hit. Now, that I don't agree with. But I can show you the list. In my opinion, these are the 5 greatest shots ever. Alfred put this graphic together. All stats provided by our friends at StatMuse. All graphics provided by my man Alfred Parslar Jr. Show this right here. Okay, these are the greatest shots, not necessarily the most clutch, the greatest shots in basketball history. Number 1 is Jordan's game winner against the Jazz in the 98 finals. That's the last shot MJ ever took as a Chicago Bull. It really encapsulated his career in that Bulls dynasty. Number 2, Ray Allen's game-tying shot against the Spurs. I think that's the clutchest shot ever hit in the history of the NBA. It held off Tim Duncan from going 6 for 6 in the finals. It helped the Heat win that game. They went on to win Game 7. They won back-to-back titles in 12 and 13. Number 3 is Kyrie's game-winning shot against the Warriors in Game 7 2016. It won the Cavs their first championship in history, Cleveland's first championship in a half century, and cemented LeBron James as at least one of the 2 greatest players ever. More on LeBron later. Number 4, I've got Steph's dagger. I think Steph's dagger against France is the fourth greatest shot in the history of basketball, given the moment, given the stakes, given the fact that this was an Olympic pool that was as deep, I've talked about it the last couple of weeks, as deep as we've ever seen it. And it was Steph Curry who had LeBron, Kevin Durant, Booker, everybody just said, we're going to step back, we're going to defer to you, my man. Little 6'3" guy to Davidson, old guy allegedly, 36 years old. I tell you, he can barely get out there on the floor some nights. The shot over two French defenders to essentially ice that game. And finally, at number 5, I put Kawhi's game-winning shot against the Sixers in Game 7, 2019. Kawhi's shot would be higher, but the fact of the matter is the 3 shots above Steph were all shots in the finals. All 3 helped win a championship. Kawhi's was in the second round, and it was a little lucky. All that said, big game performers in the history of the NBA among superstars. There's nobody better than Steph in the current game other than LeBron James. In NBA history, I think he's undeniably top 5. We could talk about the Steph Magic discussion. I'm still not quite there yet. I think if Steph gets another title, he absolutely passes Magic because you got to consider Magic just so happened to inherit the greatest player of all time at the time that he inherited him. That was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You know, a 6-time MVP, 6-time champion, and the third best player of all time, in my opinion, all-time leading scorer for nearly 4 decades before LeBron passed him. Steph inherited one of the worst-run franchises in basketball, turned it into a dynasty. That's another discussion for another day. Big game performers. LeBron's Game 7 numbers, ridiculous. He's averaged well over 30 points. I think he's only lost like 2 Game 7s in his career. It's like crazy stats in those winner-go-home decisive games. Michael Jordan, obviously, if Jordan's got you down a series, if he's got the advantage, it's over. Jordan's going to stuff you out. You think about guys like Shaquille O'Neal, who's been big time in the finals throughout the course of his career, went through a stretch from 2000 to 2002 and the Lakers three-peated. He was averaging well over 30 points, like 14, 15 assists, was just dominant in those finals. Nobody could stop him. I think that battle's been... Larry Bird's been great in big games as well. Steph's in that group. Well, Bryson, what about the 2016 finals? What about the 1984 finals for Magic Johnson? What about the fact that Michael Jordan was 1-9 in his career prior to getting Scottie Pippen? We just going to ignore that? The fact that Shaq has been swept more times than any player and any superstar rather than in NBA history? Every player has their warts. Every player has their flaws, and there's no question the 2016 finals are the lowest point of Steph Curry's basketball playing career. That aside, how about the fact that in the NBA finals, the biggest stage there is, other than the Olympics, right? How about the fact, I wrote this down, that Steph Curry has 5 times in his finals career averaged 25, 5, and 5. 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's done that 5 times in the NBA finals. No one else ever has. No one. 25, 5, and 5. That's what Steph Curry's done. For the record, Magic did that 1 time. And I've heard Magic's the better overall. Not in the finals, he's not. The lights get the brightest. Don't forget the 2015 finals when Steph, casually in a 2-2 series against the Cavs, dropped 37 on Cleveland to help Golden State to a Game 5 win. They go on to win the championship, and Steph objectively should have been finals MVP that year in 2015. If it wasn't Steph, it should have been LeBron. LeBron was the best player in that series. You go to 2017, 2018, when Kevin Durant disappeared in the fourth quarter against the Cavs, Game 1. It was Steph Curry who tied the game with an and-1 layup, helped the Warriors win that Game 1 in overtime against Cleveland. Game 3, the game where KD goes off. Who hit the go-ahead shot? Wasn't Kevin Durant. It was Steph Curry. 2019 finals. Steph, he missed the shot against Toronto. Yeah, and with a completely battered and beat-up roster, averaged 30 when Toronto's entire defensive game plan was to double and sometimes triple team Mr. Curry. They played that box and one gimmicky defense. And obviously against the Boston Celtics, who, with the additions of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, ran through the entire league last year. Yes, Steph dropped well over 30. I think Steph averaged like 34 points in the series, shot over 50% for the field, over 40% from 3, and won the finals MVP. With the defensive player of the year guarding him, mind you. Big games. There's not 5 players. I'd argue 3 players in the history of the game that I would take over Steph Curry. LeBron, Jordan, that's probably it. That's not to say Steph's one of the 5 best players ever, although I think he is not only knocking on the door, I think he's kicking the door down pretty soon. With another championship, MVP feels a little less likely than the championship. Who are we to sit up here and say that he's not in that conversation? Steph has put together a resume. I'll show this number right here. Steph, in his career, is one of 2 players in the history of the National Basketball Association to have multiple MVPs, multiple scoring titles, multiple NBA titles, and an Olympic gold medal. Steph Curry's done that. There's only one guy that can say he did that. You know his name is Michael Jordan. Like, we're starting to run out of, I'm about to get into LeBron. We're starting to run out of talking points, debate points to put down Steph. I think at this point, it is the one thing, there's 2 things about Steph that aren't remotely debatable. Number one, he's the greatest shooter ever. I've always said Steph as the greatest shooter ever is, number one, I feel like it kind of minimizes Steph in a way. Like, we think of him as only a shooter when he does so many other things I've talked about during the segment. But also the fact that Steph, it's one of those discussions, Steph is the greatest shooter ever, that we don't even bother arguing. Who's the greatest hockey player? Yeah, we don't even argue that. We argue who's number 2 behind Wayne Gretzky. You know, who's the greatest shooter ever? It's Steph, obviously. It's not even remotely debatable. And so there's that about Steph. But there's also the fact that when you talk about his longevity, when you talk about the gold medal now adding to his resume, the finals MVP, leading the Golden State Warriors dynasty when that looked like it was never going to happen early in Steph's career when he was dealing with the ankle injuries, he's an unquestionable top 10 player of all time. Again, I've got him banging on the top 5. Maybe I have him higher than most. That's fine. But you cannot objectively name 10 players that have better careers or better players than Steph. You can't. Folks, he literally changed how a sport is played, coached, and analyzed. Is Victor Wembanyama? Not to say Wemby wouldn't be great, by the way. Wemby's going to be Wemby regardless. 7-5 for crying out loud with game. Is Wemby shooting threes if Steph Curry never exists? Are we seeing the rise of players like Trae Young if Steph Curry never comes into the picture? The three-point revolution. I hear Mike D'Antoni. Yeah, that won a lot of championships in Phoenix. That's why I hear Mike D'Antoni, the 7 seconds less offense. That's what changed that. Yeah, and it got how many rings out of it? Steph's gotten 4. You know, with one all-time teammate for 2 of them, Kevin Durant. Not to minimize Clay or Draymond. They've both been critically important, neither in the same ballpark as KD or Steph. So, big game performers. Steph's in the top 5 ever. All-time players, regardless of whether you got him in the top 10, I got him at number 6, 1 slot behind Magic. You cannot argue. He is one of the 10 best players ever. You cannot put up a conversation where Steph is below the 10th best player, who I think is Bill Russell, by the way. Shout out to Bill Russell, late great Bill Russell. But what a performance. I mean, the last 3 minutes of that game for Team USA, Steph 3, KD free throws, Steph 3, Steph 3, Steph 3. That's what he does. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.